Plants, the green frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before. Hey, what's up? Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. For you first-time listeners, thank you for finding the Horticult. We love you. This is a podcast where plant geeks can get their freak on. We let loose on all aspects of horticulture, but we focus on water-wise conservation efforts. We are based in Utah, which is the second driest state. We have the second highest water use per capita. So it's a very big deal for our people in our state to conserve as much water as possible. We have a beautiful landscape here in Utah with mountains, valleys, but we have to work on changing our cultural practices to saving water. Brad was out doing stuff with his family. I wanted to put a podcast. I've been thinking about this. I actually listened to a business podcast recently, and they talked about how to excite people up, and that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm like, that totally works for landscapes, employing these different five senses. And we all think landscapes are beautiful, but why? Why are they beautiful? What about it makes it better looking than another? And I think it's not just sight. It attracts us to landscapes. So I kind of just dove into it a little bit. This could go much deeper. Maybe I'll have Brad back and we'll talk about it again. And, you know, we miss you, Brad, wherever you are. Rock on, Babylon. And with that, let's get it on. Hey, this is B-Flame from the Horticult. Today we're doing something a little different. I am without Brad. Brad was out on vacation, as summer does. You go out and go do some fun stuff, so he's out for this episode, but I had this on my mind and I've been thinking about it and I just wanted to bring it up, and it's the idea of designing your landscape with all of your five senses and how that can appeal in a deeper level than just, oh, it looks pretty. The five senses I'm going to talk about are your five senses: sight, smell, touch, hear, and taste. So sight, pretty easy. Colors, lines, in that movement, if wind comes through and pushes things, and kind of want to play with textures. We've talked about textures before a little bit, bold versus fine textured. And in our environment in the desert, it's to be water wise. A lot of the plants we use are fine textured through adaptation, being with high sunlight and high temperatures. Fine leafed plants are adapted better for the desert environment, where big, wide leafed plants are more adapted for shade. They're trying to get as much sun as they possibly can. So they have adapted these gigantic leaves to collect the sun where there's not very much sun. So if I stick a hosta, which has a huge leaf, out on the curb, that it's not going to do well because it's getting too much sun. So that's okay. So sight, colors, you want to play with the warm versus cold colors. So the warm colors are the reds, oranges, yellows. The cool colors are the blues, purples, and greens. So the green is easy. You could use color in both foliage and floral. And so the green naturally is the colors for the vegetation. Pair those greens with reds. Then you have the purples are with yellows and the oranges are with blues. So those are the complementary colors with the foliage. You could also use... There's a lot of different varieties like coral bells and heucheras, that's another name for coral bell, that have a lot of different variety of leaf color. Man, straight green to like almost like brownish gold, and anywhere in between purples, different colors like that. So you can blend these in, and you want to mix and match your cools with your warms. So you use the cool colors as kind of the background, and then you use your warms as the highlights. So with the other part of it, with the movement, the idea of the movement, the whippiness, the wind, you see the wind coming through, and that could be also on the touch side, but I'm going to use it as the sight, as you can see it moving in the wind. So that's where you could use your ornamental grasses. I don't like them to be too stiff. Like, I want them to be whippy. I actually don't have any ornamental grasses right now. What I have is Gara. So it's very moundy. It's evenly sparsed out like almost like a mushroom top, but in its little whippiness. And on the ends, there's these little flowers. So it also has color. I mean, the color of mine is white. I think there's a pink variety as well. Those are so whippy and they move so easily in the wind. And then you still have a color component along with the movement of it. And then in the fall, they kind of get a red color to them, and they're really pretty. And then when it snows, the first snow, they were gorgeous as I hadn't cut them, and the snow mounded on them, and they added another level of interest on the site. So smell can be in both floral and in the leaves, in cuts. So when you cut it, you can smell it. It's like the idea of freshly cut grass, or when you're cutting back your lavender. I love brushing up against my certain plants and smelling them, smelling the flavor. And I think about lavender, agastaki, and I also think about even daylilies, where you cut them back and they have that kind of smell to them. That's probably one of my favorite parts of gardening, actually, is when I can cut things back down and have the aroma. It also makes it very tight and clean when you're cutting things back. But yeah, I love the smell. Having it on my hands after I cut them, that's a good part. And then you could also cut them and bring them in, like cut flowers or the actual floral smell of the flowers. So smell is very important. Touch, I love touching all my plants all the time. It's just to touch them and feel them. It's also a way that you can identify health in a plant, or if it's being watered enough or underwatered. You can touch the leaves and feel if it's warm, it needs more water. If it's cool, then it's just right, because it's evapotranspiration, and that is the process of plant respiration. So it's kind of a combination of evaporation and transpiration of a plant. So they call it evapotranspiration. Is the movement of water and air from the soil into the plant and out of the canopy. It's a whole process. So evapotranspiration. And it also kind of goes with the smell. So I'll touch certain plants and then smell the aromatics on my hand without having to cut them or get too invasive with their flowers. Or hearing, I love to hear birds. So I try to get birds attracted to my garden. So I have a feeder, I have water. So that's one thing. Water's the other one. So falling water, having water rushing over, like you have a little fountain or bird feeder that is moving water, bubbling water. You could hear the wind, things rustling. So I try not to cut my grasses or things too soon, because it adds that element of rustling. So like dried out grasses or stuff like that can make a noise. I prefer to try to keep that in my garden as long as I can. So yeah, hearing, having those things implemented. I think those are the top two, is water and birds. And they're super fun. And that birds also add like the sight. And then taste. Only thing I think about is edibles. So including edibles with your garden. Even your flower beds, I try to put something in there that I can either use herbally, so medicinal purposes, just straight up edible. Like I had radishes in my garden this year. Then I also had lemon balm, and you could make dried out. I dried it out and made tea, or you could include it into other teas. And then I have some lavender that is edible and you can taste. And lavender is it almost includes all of these. So I always touch it, smell it. It looks good. The only thing I think I misses on is hearing, and then it tastes wonderful. So there's edibles involved, or just medicinal ones that you can use. So dual purpose. So that's what one thing I try to do is dual purpose plants, something that hits on more than one of the senses. Just makes your garden richer. Those are my thoughts and feelings about this idea. Maybe we'll address this again with Brad. I'm sure he has a bunch of other things to say. Oh, the other thing I thought about was maybe, and with Craig Salazar on episode 69, was more of the spiritual senses, where the connectivity that you can have with plants and animals and their environment. And maybe it's not as tangible as these five senses, but maybe a sixth sense, or just a different kind of understanding. There is a different level of connectivity that as gardeners, that's why we love gardening. I mean, yeah, you have these sights and smells and things, but there's another element to it. And I think that's an important thing to consider and not forget about. So there you go. Those were my little thoughts and feelings and tips on how you can grow with your five senses. So design your landscape, design your gardens with these kind of thoughts in mind. Thank you for all the listeners out there, the podlings that are tuning into the podcast each and every week. Until next time, bye. All right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. This is number 84. Thank you so much for listening, podlings. We love you. Hey, go check us out on Facebook or all the other social medias that we are connected to. We have a website, thehorticult.com, where you can find all the episodes of this podcast, and you can find all the links to all of our social medias. Biggest thing you can do is probably one of the smallest things. Like, share, give us a review, give us a rating, you do that with things that you like. Please, that would be great. Remember to plant on, Babylon.